call. I'd like to welcome you all to our Pattern Computer Investor presentation. This is just a reminder, first of all, that this is being recorded, that this is an investor program designed to give you an understanding of our work in XAI and reveal its real and potential impact. The call is open to our investors, potential investors, and the FIRE audience. This is not an investor earnings call, and we will not be addressing financials on this call. That'll be addressed in a future investor communication. And if you have questions regarding financials, just feel free to give me a shout and I will try and get them addressed for that future communication. We will not be taking questions today, but we are recording this call for those unable to attend. And if you have questions, by all means, just send them to me. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mark to kick off the call.
Thank you, Brad, and welcome all of our friends and investors. We're excited to be here. It's been really fun at FIRE for the last few days. Great thread today. I want to thank everybody involved in Advanced AI Day. And I'll mention that I think I would call it Advanced AM Day for Advanced Mathematics, which kind of keys into our subject of the afternoon. But it's been a terrific day. And I want to thank particularly Ben and KKD, Ken Cruz Delgado, for helping us to line up terrific speakers. It was wonderful. And for those of you who've been able to do it, we have a strengthening thread, I would say, from the very first Monday morning meeting through Carver Mead and through Larry Smarr and now here all day on tech. I'm really proud of the amount of technology that we've been able to cover in this expanded schedule at FIRE. So I hope those of you who are technically inclined have enjoyed it, because I think we've done more here this year at FIRE to do advanced mathematics and advanced AI and advanced computing and chip futures and so forth than ever. So with that, I'll mention that we have a place in history, I think, that we're pivoting around here today, tonight. And the way that works from the 200,000 foot view is, as I think those of you who are in this business know, there's an evolutionary story. And that story goes way back to the middle of the 60s, but I'm not going to go back there. But it began more recently with neural networks, which certainly are today, let's say 99% of all of the AI companies and tech that you hear about. And it moved forward from there. And for us, for our foundational story, that began in 2015. And many thanks to our friends, both on staff and around staff, for helping us do this. We had the luxury, thank you to our investors, of being able to go stealthy and build what has been called new mathematics. It's kind of a big claim, but it's something which I think is true. And Murray Cantor thinks is true, who's an IBM fellow, who's not on staff. So it was a lot of work. It remains a lot of work. We're not done. We'll never be done. We're still improving things every day, which is pretty exciting. We just had our annual math retreat about a week ago, which was a lot of fun. And so we're always trying to make it bigger and better. But the ability that we had to take a breath, step back, talk to the leaders in the field, and begin a whole new track in mathematics and exploration was worth it, we can now say. And those of you who have been following us know that it was worth it. And it's either been worth it to you as an investor, or I hope for everyone, as a point of ongoing discovery and excitement for everybody involved. You'll hear a lot about that in this meeting. And it's something of which I'm proud. All of the people on our team are proud. It's a big deal for us. So, when we started, all we could talk to you about was tech. And then we started talking to you about achievements, mostly in bio, and then we started talking to you a bit about engagements. Well, this afternoon, we have themed this particular event as the 3 flavors of explainable AI. So the entire event, which is pretty exciting, is going to be about explainable AI. We'll talk to you about what that is if you've never heard of it. We have experts to introduce you to the idea, and we'll talk to you about how it works for us. But this evolutionary story, which you're about to experience live, moved from neural networks, which we still use also, much more deeply into our own proprietary mathematics, and allowed us to create what we call pattern discovery engine or engines, and then using those to make what we call pattern discoveries, bigger than would be made usually by neural networks. And then as of this evening, we'll tell you a lot more about how did explainable AI become part of that story. I will mention that this even crept up on me, and I think it's probably my fault that's true, but in doing the kind of work we insisted on doing mathematically, and Quinn is particularly involved in this, who you'll talk with today, just to do our work with proprietary mathematics, we naturally turn to explainable AI. And everyone probably would have if they could have in neural networks, but they don't lend themselves to that. But having our own mathematics allowed us to begin doing that work years ago. And so what we're going to do today is walk you through our internal evolution of our natural inclination toward creating explainable AI for our proprietary mathematics. And I think you'll find the conversations of how we did that and how it was applied to real life problems to be enlightening. Now, before I go any further, we have a wonderful guest here this afternoon, and I'd like to introduce him to you. His name is Bill Jeffrey. Bill is the most recent addition to our advisory board, and lucky for us, he just retired from his most recent job as the CEO of SRI International, which some people call Stanford Research, but they're not supposed to do that. But SRI International, which is a terrific think tank, I think you all know that. And he also served time as the head of Hughes Medical Institute, prior to that as a chair of NIST, and the same kind of job at the President's Office of Technology and Policy. So very, very exciting to have Bill with us. And we're so excited that we flew him up to Redmond recently, about within the last month. And under NDA, the whole team that you're seeing before you gave Bill an NDA level conversation, show and tell about what we're up to and about XAI at Pattern Computer. And so I asked Bill if he would join us today for a few minutes just to explain, not under NDA terms, but non-NDA terms, which he knows, what he saw and how he felt about it, about in general, about the work and about XAI at Pattern. So Bill, over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate that introduction, and I'm honored to be here and to be part of the Pattern Computers Advisory Board. But in particular, I want to thank your team for spending that day walking me through your accomplishments in the technical foundation. I have to admit, initially, when I read your white papers and tried to understand how you identified previously unknown patterns, it seemed like magic. And it reminded me of Arthur C. Clarke's third law, right? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, fortunately, your team gave me a glimpse into that advanced technology and allowed me to understand the ingenuity and creativity that underlies the magic. It's impressive and provides fundamentally new tools to unravel the hidden gems in large, unstructured data and to present them in a way that the human gains new insights. So I saw the results of your tools applied to complex logistics problems, uncovering previously unknown pathways in cancer and drug discovery. And in each case, a new insight was uncovered, allowing the human to have that aha moment, and then to use that new insight to make additional discoveries in the virtuous cycle, and to apply those insights in ways that can be made into products to detect disease or develop personalized medicines. You started to allude to this in your introduction, but artificial intelligence really has gone through several generations. And that first generation that you alluded to was based upon the hope that computers could transcribe and, in some sense, understand human language. But the hardware didn't allow for the complexity. And then in the 80s, we saw the rise of deep learning, such as Hopfield nets and expert systems. But again, computer storage limited its applicability to just toy problems. Over time, that changed as computer memory and computations followed Moore's law and facilitated the rise of what we now call big data machine learning. And this approach has worked. Substantial advances have been made in areas like computer vision, which enables future autonomous mobility. But there are problems with AI that's used this way. The complexity of the operation obfuscates how the results were generated. And there is a holy grail within artificial intelligence. That is that understanding why the algorithm developed the answer that it did. For example, is the result unbiased? Is the result being spoofed? Is it robust? And most importantly, can I make a decision based upon that result? Trust in the results is paramount. The results drive decisions that impact financial markets, health, and in national security, literally life and death. And trust is built upon understanding. The why of an answer is often more important than the what. And that takes us back to pattern computer and what I saw on my day up there is the ability to discern hidden structures in large data sets. By extending their magic, pattern computers developing the ability to understand the why an answer was generated, and importantly, discern an underlying model that produced the results. This is novel and breathtaking, and I'm excited to watch pattern computer begin to unlock and reveal the mystery behind big data machine learning. So Mark, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this, and thank you to the pattern computer team for all the fantastic works that you're doing. Mark, back over to you.
We're really excited to have you on board. So thanks for everything. And we all look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah.
Well, next up, another Slacker is part of our Slacker team, Ben Brown, who is a bright shining star in the Department of Energy and has 2 appointments at Berkeley Labs and University of Cal Berkeley. Ben, are you with us? And would you jump in?
I will, sure.
Okay.
So I've been tasked to tell you a little bit about why Xai matters and to sort of set the stage to understand the magnitude of what we're talking about. So science right now doubles human knowledge more or less every year, right? That's about the rate of human advancement. The amount of published knowledge in the world doubles about every year. Xai is the means by which we multiply that 10x, 100x, make it a double exponential. Xai is a change point in the rate of accumulation of what we understand about the world. And the reason why that is because models of incredible complexity learn properties analogous to physics, but for enormously complex systems, where developing a first principles model by human intuition alone is intractable or impossible, or at least has never been done. These AI algorithms, especially the ones that PCI has developed internally, are able to walk into these systems and make those changes. And there's a tremendous difference between these sorts of algorithms and things like AlphaFold, right? Google developed AlphaFold that predicts protein structure pretty well, or at least X-ray structure, even if not liquid structure. But there's no new insight into how or why protein structure emerges, right? There's no new soft matter physics. The difference between an engine like AlphaFold and the technology that PCI develops is the insight, it's the knowledge, it's the understanding. And that's what enables engineering. Xai is not an incremental advancement. It's not solving a single scientific problem. It is altering the rate at which science advances. Xai has the potential to be a science as impactful as was the arrival of calculus, right? We went from Copernican mechanics, fitting elliptical curves that were predictive but didn't generalize to understand astrophysics, to F equals ma with Newton, right? And calculus gave us incredibly rich generalization, reasoning from a little bit of data to really understanding properties in the world. And that's the difference between something like AlphaFold and what pattern computer is doing. It's that capacity to learn from data about patterns in the world that generalize, that extrapolate, that provide real insight. So shown here on this plot, we see an illustration of the difference between pattern discovery and pattern recognition. Now, in pattern recognition is what is the vast majority of what's done out there in industry today. You have a bunch of models, each model works well, you ensemble them, the ensemble works even better, and you deploy it based on return on investment. This is how you build industrial pipelines, and this is how you test and try to advance industrial products. And it works, but it works incrementally. Pattern discovery is different. You fit a model, the model describes a pattern, it learns from data to describe a pattern in the world. You interrogate that model, you gain insight into why that pattern emerged. and you learn incredible things. You learn models that are analogous to models from physics, but about systems as complex as our climate or biological systems, or new physics for material science. But we are coming up on an inflection point in the rate at which science advances. And I believe that is XAI and that is pattern computer. And Mark, I'll turn it back to you.
So Ben, I have two questions before I let you go. One is, would you just give a very quick definition of three things. Would you give a very one-sentence definition of explainable AI?
Explainable AI is the capacity to extract the human understandable model from a fitted AI model.
Perfect. And would you please mention the paper you worked so hard on, which is on our website for those who want to go find it?
Sure. So it was my pleasure to lead a DOE effort to put together an XAI white paper for visioning what that was pursuant to a series of town hall meetings in 2019. We had involvement from over 2,000 academics from 200 institutions, and Pattern Computer played a lead role. Luca on this call is the lead author of that paper, and that really lays down in many, many more pages as opposed to one sentence what is XAI and what really are we playing for, and how do we see this advancing? And this figure is one of the many figures in that paper. So I would definitely encourage everyone to have a look at that.
And last, and then I'll let you go, is if someone had actually discovered a proper way of doing explainable AI, would that be new and novel?
Completely new and completely novel. Nothing that exists out there today is explainable AI. We have the American Radiological Association recently wrote a paper attacking the things that are branded out there as XAI. The radiology has been claimed as one of the success stories, that we save time for radiologists by having AI algorithms analyze the images. But the American Radiological Association just said, guys, we have no confidence in these models. They don't save a minute. We still have to look at the whole image. It isn't there. And even the cherry-picked examples of so-called XAI, it's not there. It's not there out there in the wild.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. Thanks very much. And we're now going to move to Nidhi, who's with us. And Nidhi is a very, very important part of our bio team. We have, I think, 2 bio team direct members here, and she's the first. Nidhi, are you with us?
Yeah.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mark, and good evening, everyone. As you've already heard from Ben, over the past years, our engineering team has done a tremendous job in developing and refining several XAI-capable machine learning algorithms. I will be talking about a few of them. But first and foremost, let's understand why explainability is so important for drug discovery. And in addition to the reasons that Ben already mentioned, one of the most important reasons is that biomedical data that we so heavily rely on has presence of errors, non-linearity. It has seemingly random events. And on top of that, our understanding of molecular pathology is still incomplete. What that does, such unpredictability in data can lead to improper training and possible biases. And that's what the explainability in our models are aiming to address. So let's start with the first algorithm, SONAR, which was one of the first algorithms that we developed and applied to drug discovery. This was essentially an unsupervised technique, which means no prior knowledge of physical or functional network was required to identify associations between genes. This algorithm simply looks into the data, finds clear gene signals, and quantifies the relationship between these genes. That is how one gene is associating with another with respect to a certain disease. So we end up generating a network graph, and on the basis of this, we identify certain gene interactions. And it is because of the explainability of our algorithms that we can extract meaningful gene associations that can be explained in terms of their mechanism of actions, targeted pathways, actionability, and so on. And clearly, after that, we can translate them into testable hypotheses in the form of combinations and repurposed drugs. So initially, we validated SONAR for its ability to identify gene associations using mutation data from lung adenocarcinoma patients. And if you're interested, a view of the resulting network graph is displayed on the homepage of PCI's website. Once the algorithm was validated, we applied sonar to gene expression data from breast cancer patients, the Metabig data set, and identified several testable combinations. These, through several rounds of in vitro and in vivo testing in models that were specific to triple-negative breast cancer subtype, carried out at 2 different research laboratories, we identified 2 sets of potential synergistic drug combinations that had high efficacy and good tolerability to treat triple-negative breast cancer. Particularly, CHAMP-A has shown promising synergistic activity against 2 separate triple-negative breast cancer cell lines in animal studies. However, the narrative that we are building or we are going to develop only improves with the preclinical animal testing being complete. And at this time, a second round of animal testing is underway for triple-negative breast cancer combinations at a global research laboratory to generate stronger data to support the selection of patient population for human clinical trials. So while we were involved with the testing of discoveries from triple-negative breast cancer program, our scientists had made important strides with another algorithm, which is Leonard Island. And this algorithm differs from sonar in being supervised, which means this algorithm leverages prior information such as knowledge of metabolic networks, pathways, or patient outcomes to detect associations between genes. And with this supervision, Leonard Island can create directed acyclic graphs to identify sets of genes that appear to influence one outcome over the other. And just like sonar, these interactions can also be translated into potential combinations and repurposed drugs to be submitted for further investigation. Our next project was high-grade serous ovarian cancer, wherein we used both Leonard Island and sonar to identify 31 potential combination drugs. And I'm pleased to inform you that as we speak, the first round of in vitro assays currently underway to screen our discoveries for their activity against this particularly aggressive and most prevalent subtype of ovarian cancer. All in all, we believe we've made quite a bit of progress in drug discovery programs, not only in showcasing the tremendous potential of XAI-capable algorithms to discover novel and meaningful patterns, but also in providing verification of these findings through biologically evaluating these patterns, as you have seen through our breast cancer program. In any case, drug discovery remains a very complex process, and we still have a lot to learn. With your continued support, we will continue to build on our platform, our methods, our know-hows that are very critical to our ability to discover novel therapies against complex diseases in a cost and time-efficient manner. So thank you for your time. And with that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Alejandro Wolf-Yadlin, who is the Director of Bioinformatics at PCI. He's an accomplished scientist with extensive experience in systems biology, proteomics, genomics, mathematical modeling, you name it. And he has been instrumental in developing, refining some of these explainable models. So over to you, Ale.
Thank you, Nidhi.
Thank you.
Ale.
Thank you, Nidhi, for the very kind information introduction. I'm very happy to be here. And if I could get the next slide, please, Brad. So I'm going to talk about our work in bioinformatics, and I'm going to focus on what we have done in colorectal cancer, which Nidhi didn't mention. In colorectal cancer, we have collaborated with the Fred Hutch Research Center. And the question that we are trying to answer for them is, will I get colorectal cancer? We got from them a database with about 100,000 patients, 38 million SNPs per patient, and 38 million SNP is a single nucleotide polymorphism, mutations. As some of the people that were here today, they know that we have our genome is encoded as DNA. The DNA is composed of 4 bases, A, C, G, T, and a mutation will be, oh, this protein should have an A, but now it has a C. So these patients have 38 million of those. How do we figure out which one of those 38 million mutations are the ones that predict colorectal cancer? It's an alphabet soup. There's a bunch of collinearity in the data. The challenges are immense. And just to give some sort of background, when the Hutch came to talk to us, their best published results had an AUC of 62%, predicting risk for cancer between patients. The patient risk is 1 if the patient is at risk for cancer. Risk is 0 if the patient has no risk for cancer. They use about 1.2 million of these SNPs to get to this 62%. We use less than 1,000 to get to a 68% AUC. And because we were able to discover with the tools that Nidhi was actually describing, what are the interactions that are important. We're not just like adding SNP after SNP after SNP. What we're doing is actually trying to smartly understand which ones interact. And for everyone that's seen that 68% is not that high, I greatly doubt that more than 70 to 75% of colorectal cancer can be explained genetically. We are missing all the epidemiological data, which is the risk factors, alcoholism, smoking, and things that actually develop cancer in people that don't have even the genetic background to have the risk. So we think what's explainable by genomics, I think we're close to the top of what can be explained. Next slide, please.
Just came. Yep.
So because we have these predictions about 68% AUC, we start trying to understand, well, we know that we cannot predict all these people by SNP. So can we divide the people in those who can be predicted and who cannot be predicted? And to do that, we learned that the data is in clusters. And by clusters, there are different people that are better predicted by some set of SNPs or mutations, and other people that are better predicted by another set of SNPs or mutations. And there are people that, honestly, you cannot predict from genomics. You need other data. So we developed some proprietary mathematics to address these clusters. We then can divide the data into clusters, see to which cluster a new patient belongs, and then we can predict with some groups. And then our AUC started going from 70% to 80%, and we go to very specific groups. We can go to 100%, and that 100% is for very small groups. That is what you will say. These are signature markers of disease. These are people that if they are predicted by this cluster and have those SNPs, they are very, 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 very likely to develop colorectal cancer. So what we learn from this is not only we can understand biology and start looking at what is biology behind colorectal cancer, what's the word, sensitivity of people, is that this approach can apply to any data, and we can make discoveries about small groups from big data. We can start teasing the data and not look at a monolith that is almost, that is like confusing and scary, but cut it into pieces and understand each piece on its own.
Thank you, Ali. And I think people will all agree, when you look at nature, it tends to cluster. It's a very interesting thing, whether you're looking at the night sky, at galaxies, So developing proprietary mathematics to help with clustering, which you've helped do, is a big deal for us. So thank you very much.
It's been really fun.
Yeah, good. It's been fun. Okay, so next up, we have this project, which you've heard of if you're an investor in Pattern, called Prospectral, or you may remember it as Sunset Island. And we have this fellow with us you just saw come up on the screen, Matt. And Matt is a multi-skilled individual with us almost since the start. And he has been head to toe deep into this project. He's a project lead for it. I don't think he slept for the last year or so. We apologize to his entire family for that. And here he is. So Matt, over to you. Tell us about Prospectral.
Thanks, Mark. So I come to you all from the Redmond office, where I've got a setup here for things to show you guys. So Prospectral began as an idea on how to apply our mathematical tools to diagnosing disease, and in this case, the global pandemic of COVID-19. And how we went about this is we started working with partners at Los Alamos National Labs for data gathering. We had identified a particular technique for measurement that we felt would be advantageous to our algorithms. And from the small data set that we began with when we started with Los Alamos National Labs, we were able to achieve pretty astonishing results in a short time with a 98.5% balanced accuracy across prediction for COVID infection versus non-infection. And one of the highlights of our tool in the further studies that we did is the ability to tune that model such that we are capable of very rapidly choosing a model for different applications. So Mark had termed it the Black Knight model, none shall pass. So if we tune our model towards sensitivity to making sure that folks with a high likelihood of having COVID-19 do not enter a public venue and infect others, we're able to adapt to that very quickly with our tools. And we were able to achieve on our test set 100% accuracy on specificity or on sensitivity, while only losing a few percentage points down to the low 90s in sensitivity. And that's even with just a small data set. All of these numbers we expect to improve as we've continued to gather data. So that's how it began. And from those early successes, we've been investing our time, my sleep, as Mark mentioned, and many other efforts into bringing this thing into a real device that is working itself towards production. We've already got devices for measurement in the field in Modesto, California. I actually was speaking with them earlier today. We've got them in Santiago, Chile. We have them in the DC metro area. And we're looking at partnerships in other locations to expand where we're collecting data across a large demographic. So along with those locations for gathering the data, we've obviously been working internally in order to improve the models as that data comes in. And that is going extremely well. And the engineering for the device itself is going well. So I'm going to activate other camera over here.
This is drum roll, big reveal.
I'm stuck here. Go. All right. So if you can see this is our prospectral prototype device heading towards production. This is live. This is the actual launch screen we have here. Hopefully it is not too washed out. And we can see.
Are people seeing that?
Yeah, I think we need to switch over to the other PCI office in there. There we go. All right. So welcome prospectral. So this is our device. And you can see we are getting ready for testing. So just to give you a sense of scale, this device right here, just a few pounds, I can hold it in my hands here, is capable of doing tests every 3 seconds, so that with a manual response of people inserting samples and taking it back out, we can do samples every 8 to 10 seconds. And with enhancements of accessories that are planned for this device, we are expecting throughput to fully reach the maximum testing rate that the device can do, so every 3 seconds. So we're talking about thousands of tests per day, and the ability, thousands of tests per hour, and the ability to change how rapid testing is done with the same level of accuracy as the PCR testing that currently takes hours to report, and with better accuracy than the other rapid tests that still take 15 to 30 minutes.
Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate that. And in partnership with Matt, we have Dan with us, who's our new head of global sales, to talk about that aspect of the device.
Thank you, Mark. While Brad's bringing up my slide, Matt did a good job describing the prospective device. And when you take something to market, you really have to consider what is the value proposition to your target customers. And given the accuracy of this device, given that it can actually test in 3 seconds, it really comes down to accurate, fast, low cost, non-invasive, high throughput COVID testing. With 3 seconds per test, you can test a lot of people in a short amount of time. And these tests really amount to really a couple dollars per test. And so when you look at that, you can say, oh, well, what are the obvious target markets? Well, where a lot of people gather and where people want to be in safe environments. Those are the very obvious target markets in the near term. So with that in mind, we actually leaned in our connections and we reached around the world to help us. So we put a partner in Chile. We got a partner for us in Australia, one in Germany, and one in India. And our goal here is to really choose partners very carefully who can have access to markets, who understand this particular diagnostic device, and who also have connections in the governments, because just like in the US, where we have to take this device through the FDA, we also need to go through these governments and get the device improved in those countries. So we've lined up a number of partners to help us take this to market very quickly on a global level. So when you look at the revenue model of the prospectual device, it really starts out here in the short term in selling the device, which can create a significant revenue stream for us. We'll include the COVID model with the device, so that's free, but we're going to charge for every test that is done. And so it doesn't take very long for the revenue stream from the testing fees to exceed the revenue stream from the device. And you can think of this kind of as the printer model. HP introduced us to this years ago. Buy the printer, oh, but you got to buy the ink cartridges. And it's the ink that keeps paying for years and years and years. Okay, so that's the short-term view. And I say short-term, I don't know, is that 18 months? Is that 24 months? Hard to know. COVID's going into a little bit of a quiet spell right now. But what I have learned from our partners, including our US partners, is many of them have contracts in place right now to continue doing COVID testing for the next 18 to 24 months to make environments safe. So I don't think that market's going away instantly, but it's gonna maybe be a little quiet for the moment. Okay, moving out into long-term, and long-term right now to me is really maybe 18 months and beyond, because we can begin to add other infection models, influenza A, influenza B, RSV. In fact, we've already done some of the research for influenza A and B, and we know we can detect these. These actually become another revenue source for us, because as we go through the FDA process and get these approved, we can sell these models and add them to the machine. This does something really, really good for all of us. It takes the prospectual diagnostic device, which starts out testing COVID, and turns it into truly a diagnostic device. And the beautiful thing about that is now you have revenue from the device, you've got revenue from the additional infection models that we can produce for many years as we add more and more things we can detect, and you have test fees from all of these. So you end up having 3 revenue streams from a prospectual device that's now turned into a true diagnostic device that will give us revenue for years to come. And that's the beauty of it. Mark?
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. Well done. I would like to turn this now over to Ty. All of you know Ty. I think he's our CTO. He is definitely the guy who keeps the whole thing running and together. Ty, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. You know, it's really fun working at Pattern, because there's so many people that have many talents and bring to the table unique skills and abilities. And one of these is, you may have met before in previous presentations, it was Quinn Jackson, who's our Chief Scientist Mathematics. And Quinn brings to the table the ability to go back to the fundamentals of mathematics. And while he can operate well inside the box, he generally prefers operating outside the box. He's very adept at developing new concepts and new ideas. And while we worked through Leonard Island and the different capabilities of Leonard Island, we started to see things that we could improve upon, because as we ran through the data sets, we learned more and more about the characteristics of the algorithmic models. So let me hand it off to Quinn to take it from here and to describe the amazing work that he's been doing. Quinn?
Thank you, Ty. I appreciate the introduction. I was going to say some of the things you said. I'm going to say, first of all, that my parents used to be annoyed with me as a child because I would always ask questions like, why is the sky blue and why is grass green? And eventually they got fed up and said, it's just because. And that's basically the state of machine learning today, just because it just works. We know that you can throw a data set at a machine learning algorithm and you can get a predictor out of it. And that predictor can be really good. And we might be able to gain a little bit of leverage on those existing algorithms, or we can go back to first principles. So I would say that explainable AI, the explainable part of it begins with the understanding of it. If you don't understand something, you can't explain it to anyone else. So how do we understand a data set? First of all, we turn a data set into a mathematical equation. So human readable mathematical equations are the beginning of explainable AI. Now, I've demonstrated that in the past on this Wisconsin breast cancer data set using a technology that we have called Guilford Island. But Guilford Island is a BB gun compared to the double-barreled shotgun of Iceland. Iceland has been used in a paper that's on our technology case studies web page. If you go there, you will find a white paper that specifically shows how we were able to beat the results of 3 peer-reviewed studies in machine learning. But we didn't just beat the results. And here's where the explainable part comes in. So yes, we can say, we can predict the malignancy or non-malignancy of a cancerous tumor 0.1% more than the published result. But look at that equation there. That equation is how the prediction is made. So of the 30 covariates that are available to us, 4 of them are used in the actual decision about whether or not that's and we know exactly how they're used. And the next study, we look at a heart failure data set, and this one looks at will the subject die before the next medical visit? Kind of important to know that. They suggested that 2 covariates, that is 2 features of the patient, could be used to determine with 58.5% best accuracy that that patient would die or not. We were able to show with those same 2 different covariates, Iceland could make a model that could do 75.4%. But that's not good enough because that doesn't explain anything other than, you know, those 2 covariates, which were ejection fraction and serum creatinine, which everyone knows are important to, you know, heart condition. Well, we found 4 other covariates using our algorithm automatically. And when those 4 other covariates were used, we jumped up to 81.4%. Now, I think everyone agrees that that many patients being able to know that they should probably immediately go to hospital, it's important. So we understand not only why what level of prediction we have, but why those predictions are being returned, and we can reason about them medically. So next slide, please. Then on the publicly available data sets, we found that behavior determinant-based cervical cancer. Now, this particular study asked whether or not certain behaviors that were considered risky in the Malaysian population actually had an impact on the prediction of whether or not women would develop cervical cancer. Now, the best prediction that was available there was 91.7, and we were able to get 97.2%. And we were also able to do it using only 4 of the 19 questions. So if you had to ask 4 questions and only 4 questions of someone on the street to determine whether or not they might have a risk of cervical cancer, it's better than asking whether or not they want to answer 19 questions, because those questions were rather embarrassing. So if we could go to the next slide. Finally, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Now we get to customers. This isn't just about whether we can beat published results. We actually deal with customers using this technology. And we have been able to determine in the mining industry with a customer that there is a very strong likelihood of a specific chemical composition of what's being processed in their machinery causing excessive wear on their machinery. And when we presented the results of this to them, without being specific, let's just say that they said that nobody else has been able to do that ever in this industry. We weren't able to just say how much went through increase the wear, but specifically what kind of composition was causing specific wear. And this is further investigation and relationship with that client. And finally, we have Namita Lab. Namita Lab presented us with a study that they had done and had commissioned on a breast cancer diagnostic test. And they were given results that were pretty good: 68.2% balanced accuracy, 88% specificity, which is true negatives, and 48.3% sensitivity, which is true positives, which is decent. We were able to deliver them 86.5% balanced accuracy, 92.1% specificity, and 80.9% sensitivity. Now, I remind you, what we're delivering is not just a predictor. We were able to supply models specifically to show the predictions that were being made, but we were able to show exactly which components of those data sets were used in determining those predictive rates. And that allows their scientists to analyze those further and determine like what's up. So obviously those are very important. So I'll return you back to Ty.
Thank you, Quinn. And you know, the key thing is that what you're seeing are results beyond published peer-reviewed papers. Right? These are things that this is the best work that academic institutions are doing, and you know, we are able to then extend it and go beyond what their results are. And that's really exciting, and it's really truly measures at a very high bar of what the performance capabilities are. And that ability to have that explainability of the discovery that leads to the understanding, that makes all the difference in the world to our customers, because now they know where to investigate. And that's the power of XAI. That's where the magic begins to us. So I'll hand it back to Mark and we'll go on from there.
Well, Ty, you might want to talk about flight ops.
Okay, very good. So flight ops, I'll be relatively short on this.
All right.
But flight ops is really the question of understanding and discovering the patterns in flight departure delays. And this is the ability for us to be able to work with a public data set that people can then challenge us on and work with us on, but also it's a part of the explanation of how we actually do the work. And so the impactful part, the challenge here is that the airlines are losing money due to flight departure delays. $28 billion in 2018 that are accumulated due to flight delays. Direct cost to the airlines of $4.5 billion. So one of the challenges was to discover what are the things that are causing flight delays. And for someone who spent a large amount of his time on aircraft during a major part of his career, this is near and dear to me. So the data sets we used were the US Bureau of Transportation Statistics, because that had all the base information about the flights themselves and aspects of the flights, including the planes and the aircraft, the engines and things of that order. It also had the scheduled and actual departure times, so therefore we got the flight delay information. The FAA data sets gave us the aircraft type, manufacturer, and date information, as well as the operational network data that we'll talk about in a moment. The weather data, the dark sky engine, allowed us to get both departure and arrival information at the various airports, and then the weather station location, so we could actually figure out what was the weather at the time of the scheduled departure, and was that able to actually impact the departure of the aircraft. And the total of data that we built was 7.2 million flights by 130 covariates. So that was a big data set. The initial result set, and some of you have heard parts of this, but we haven't actually told you what this is and why. And so this is our reveal on what we found, because we talked about some of this previously, but the initial result set came out very interesting, because this is literally it. The flight date, tail number, and route were the most indicative of flight departure delays. Then it was tail number, route, and departure time, and then tail number and destination route. So tail number, I'm sitting here and I'm familiar with aircraft and I'm familiar with the aviation system in some detail. And as the subject matter expert on this, I mapped the flight dates, aircraft, and routes with the highest flight delays, and found that the patterns were telling me a story about aircraft that were traveling and transiting a region of the United States, some regional area, and that was what was mapping into these delays. So we had a latent variable. So there was something here that was going on that I knew where to go looking now, because the pattern told me something else that was going on. And so these secondary pieces of information led me to where the result needed to be. And where that was is that the weather data didn't include the en route weather data affecting the jet routes that connect the major cities. And so for those you may be familiar with it, next slide, the jet routes are just basically the highways in the sky. So these are the ways that when you fly from Seattle to Denver, you don't actually go direct. You go through a series of connecting jetways. And so these jet routes are the way that you travel across the sky. However, in those jet routes are at 1,000 to 2,000 feet vertical separation, so you can have multiple aircraft on the same route at different altitudes. You typically have aircraft spaced in 5 nautical mile horizontal separation, et cetera, et cetera. But this is how the jets travel. The issue, next slide, is that when you have a storm across a region of the United States, you can cut off a major section. So just in your mind, draw a line, for example, from Chicago down to Atlanta, and look at all the jet routes that get cut off when you cut off that section. So anybody who's heading kind of to the northeast is going to get cut off if those jet routes are closed due to bad weather. That's what we're looking for here. So next slide, please. So what I did was I went to the FAA operational network and got the traffic management initiative information that gave us the information about en route traffic delays initiated by the air traffic control, which is called TRACON, and a specific subgroup called the operational network. And that identified the Tower 2 and Tower From delays initiated by the OpsNet. And when I added that into the data set, remember, we're dealing, 7.2 million by 130. So let's add 2 more, right? So we went and added that data on, and clearly it came right to the top. The results were Tower 2 scheduled departure time, leg, and the Tower From. Two of those factors are directly related to the operational network due to en route traffic. Now, what does this mean? The thing about these class of storms are that these class of storms are things you can measure, 3 days in advance. These size of storms, we can forecast in advance. So let's move on, next slide, please. So the goal here, the goal here is to be able to look at what are the different ways that we can use to travel across the skies. Okay, so let me ask you, just because of time, the cloud cover in July, the other part of the answer, we talked a lot about clustering, and Quinn has done a lot of work in clustering. That clustering work allows us to discover things like these. The cloud cover in July and August 2018, you see its tail number, destination, and the weather arriving cloud cover is what that means.
You got to wrap it up.
Okay, and that identifies a cluster, identified the fires that were occurring in California. And so clustering in some of this, we discover things we weren't even expecting, because in 2021, when we actually started running this data set, we hadn't even thought about the storms, but all of a sudden it comes out in the patterns that the data tells the story that, oh yeah, not only are these delays related to that, but they're related also to the storms. So the question from business standpoint that we learned from doing this is, what if the airlines actually had flexible routing? Because these storms are known in advance, if you can actually anticipate that, instead of routing all your traffic through Chicago, what if you route it through Kansas City or St. Louis, for example? Because that way you're not going to take these flight delay hits, and you actually are becoming more flexible of an airline, and you have more reliable delivery, and you also are avoiding all these terrible delays. And so there's ways to work around this, and we're talking with the airlines to that. Again, the direct cost of the airlines, $4.5 billion. It's a huge opportunity, and the airlines can realize that we can discover patterns in their operations to allow them to be more efficient.
Thank you, Ty. Oh, we still got more to go.
Oh, yes. And so, by the way, people have asked us regarding the work that we're doing. And so just to describe the components, as you'll see, Sonar, Leonard Island, and Guilford Island are the pattern discovery engines that we have been using. And they have a lot of subtended technologies that enable us to do different things, to understand characteristics of the data sets. We won't go into detail on these. But then we have the dimensional navigator that allows us to have the up to 8-dimensional displays in virtual reality, causal relationships defined by Boundary Bay. We have reporting work that we're developing right now called Obstruction Island. And then, as Mark has mentioned, we have the ability to do work in materials. We have specialized code for imaging. We have special code for biology that NITI and Ale are using extensively. That's been developed by Gavin. And then you saw Matt with the diagnostics work with Sunset Island, and then Thunder Bay, which is work that we're doing and developing in the area of time series. We have test and simulation code bases in Sextant and Harbor Island. And these are the main components. Next slide. And so we're currently moving toward production mode right now, getting these systems. And so the data will actually flow. The orchestrator will actually coordinate all of that information. So the customer account, device account security will actually flow with the orchestrator into the pattern discovery engines onto Guilford Island, which builds the mathematical models. And then Block Island and Boundary Bay provide the navigator, and Obstruction Island provides the reporting. You will notice that as we come out of the model development, that model development will actually can come back around, and we continue to refine the models. We continue to work both to identify collinearity in the data set, as well as to be able to find what are the clusters that reside within. This is the zoom in and the zoom out capabilities. So there is one more thing to this one, which is you may, the ones with sharp eyes might have noticed that Vargas Island is now showing up on a roadmap. And this is something Mark, when we started Pattern Computer, we had a long discussion about what we're going to do and what challenges we're going to take on. And one of the things that Mark is known for is taking on big, bold challenges and really just defying them and saying, we're going to solve it. And 2 years ago, and something we've not talked about with the team, we've identified Luca as a research, he's basically a research scientist focused on advanced mathematics and is incredibly talented. We haven't said much more about him. Well, what Mark made a bet a long time, when we started out, that we have the ability to do explainable AI, that we would be able to take apart these neural networks with all these hidden layers and really get underneath them. And so what Mark has done has made the bet. And so now, Mark, on to you.
Thank you, Ty. And, we always do these things. We telegraphed the pitch a little bit here, but I was trying to be a little bit cute and say the 3 flavors of XAI at Pattern, which of course were Sonar, Iceland, and Leonard Island. And then we could do this one more thing. So here's one more thing, and I'm going to turn it right over to Ben to lead this off. Ben?
So I talked about the importance of XAI, and now over the past couple of years, it's been my pleasure to work with Luca on this XAI manuscript for the DOE, really defining what it is. And Luca has been working to enable Pattern to take apart and understand, to make explainable any AI algorithm. So not just their proprietary tools, but any tools, so that we get to the point where the AI algorithm, whatever it is, it's just an optimization routine. It's like booster rockets, right? Once you're in space, you don't care about the boosters anymore. You want the insight. And that's what Luca has been working on. He's been working on being able to turn any arbitrarily complex AI algorithm into a glass box. And it is now my pleasure to turn it over to Luca.
Thanks, Ben. All right, so I'm Luca, and I've spent the past 2.5 years in stealth mode using PCI's proprietary technologies to build out our XAI engine, known as Vargas Island. My goal was an uncompromising one, to enable the discovery of patterns learned by an AI algorithm, no matter how complex or opaque. Machine learning and AI has had a profound impact on the world in the last decade, and almost all of that is a result of black box models that are enormous, both in scale and complexity. These models generally make decisions and determinations within some known context, but without giving any reason or explanation as to how they came to that decision. Others have already described why having such explanations can be so important and powerful, but just to hammer it in again, XAI enables all of these things. Testing, safety, guarantees are all necessary for trustworthy AI integration in self-driving cars and medical applications such as automated diagnosis, prognosis, and surgery. Accountability and transparency are required for applications in medicine, law, insurance, and credit decisions for regulatory reasons. Learning and discovery. In the future, extracted knowledge from AI systems will advance science and engineering. And repair, adjustments, and improvements to the models themselves will be made possible, and that's applicable everywhere. So the lack of explainability in these already world-changing models is sorely missed. PCI has developed technologies that change this paradigm, but the bottom line is that many areas of industry currently rely on AI systems like neural networks that don't inherently admit pattern discovery. We perceive the emergence of a market sector. Extracting insights from AI models that work in the model's applications domain. Many are deeply satisfied with their black box models, yet frustrated when those models become inexplicably embarrassing. Amazon built a racist, sexist HR bot at enormous expense that they had to ultimately scrap. European credit companies made decisions with opaque AI models that are increasingly impossible to justify under European GDPR laws. They need explanations. They need pattern discovery. They need to understand the decisions AI models make. Today, we're introducing the beginning of PCI's solution to this problem. We have developed a technique to explain how black box models make decisions regarding specific and targeted inquiries. We now know that human understandable representations are attainable. I'll present our capabilities on the flight operations data that you've seen processed with Untitled Island, an intrinsically interpretable and explainable proprietary learning tool. Now, even when these data are modeled by a complex black box neural network, we can obtain the same level of insight into the model. To demonstrate this, we fit a deep neural network to the flight operations data. Using Vargas Island, we can simply show and explain the behavior of the model when applied to a given flight. This provides an explanation in tandem with the decision along the lines of, in these cases, the model considers factors A, B, C, and D in making its decision. Furthermore, as these factors change, the decision will be altered in the specific way following these rules. The knowledge alone that these representations exist is hugely important, as the question of whether such representations for complex models were even attainable has been hotly debated for over 20 years. So not only is that answered with a resounding yes, but we've done it too. At present, our model is applicable to feed-forward neural networks and a variety of other learning architectures. Subsequent development will expand capabilities specifically around imaging, audio, and video data. Now, let's look at an application on the flight ops data that Ty just talked about. Here's a poor representation of what the neural network has learned. Many flights, each with a predicted delay, but no good way of understanding anything or see a meaningful pattern. We're flying through a high dimensional space, viewing 2 dimensions at a time, and no patterns are obvious.
This is very nice, Luca. It illustrates the noise and complexity that makes seeing inside the neural network so challenging. So you're flying through many of the 100 or whatever it is dimensions.
Yeah. So let's make this trackable by zooming in with Vargas Island so we can see what we can say about one specific flight. Vargas Island is resolving 2 of the important dimensions for predicting this flight's delay. What we're seeing emerge is the representative local model that models this flight and related flights. Right away, we can see a link between the measurement and the prediction, and the flight's place in all of this. You can see it with your eyes, and you can explore it. So we have this simple, low-dimensional representative model to which we can apply all of the tools and tests of classical statistics. This is a real and necessary capability for realizing the grand promises of XAI. This is exactly the type of tool you need to understand how Amazon's automated human resources bot inadvertently became racist, how Apple's credit card approval system became sexist, and why Tesla's cars sometimes crash for no obvious reason. Not only that, but these tools might even open the door to fixing those systems instead of having to junk them and start over.
This is absolutely groundbreaking, Luca. I mean, this means, to put it in perspective, that we never again have to wonder why an AI system makes the decisions it makes.
That's right. We're in the process of removing the walls between complex AI models and simple human explorable models. The first step towards being able to manipulate and engineer change in systems of arbitrary complexity is being able to see response surfaces just like these. These are the decision functions that the AI has learned. Next steps will be to integrate Vargas Island with Iceland to provide symbolic, concise, mathematical models that further enhance human interpretability and, also notably, dramatically compress the computation required to store and evaluate the fitted model. If the variables relevant to this or any response service are controllable, then that opens the door to asking what if style questions. What if this value were higher or lower? By pairing these representations with a set of tools available from causal analysis, we can start to question prior decisions and actions, and in a very grounded way, predict what would likely have happened had a different action been taken. For the flight operations data, those what ifs would be centered around what could be done differently to reduce or even avoid certain delays. For example, if this variable were higher, then you can see the effect on the predicted delay change in a clearly understandable way. And once you can ask this type of question so easily for any flight, all bets are off. You can set analysts loose to ask and play out any idea they might have. Tie that together with the cost in the billions that Ty cited, and you have the potential for immense savings. All of this guided by an opaque black box model made transparent and understandable using Vargas Island. In the near future, we'll be able to apply Vargas Island to target industrial sectors that rely, often dangerously, on AI decision engines. We'll deliver the transparency that regulators here and in Europe require and aid companies in understanding and learning from their own internally built AI solutions.
Thank you very much, Luca. So, I mean, this really is incredible. You know, what we are seeing literally through the eyes of the neural network, whether or not low dimensional representations like this existed within these complex models has been debated for over 20 years, right? And not only have you answered that, you can actually show us. It really is amazing. And I'm so excited to see where this project continues to go. Thank you very much, Luca.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Luca. Pretty big wow, I would say. Pretty big wow. So you kind of get the feeling that history is being made today, I guess, Ben. I don't know. It's how it feels to me. And even though you've been involved, Luca's been involved for a long time, many years, it's one of those moments where you want to take a breath and go, well, that was worth it. So I would like to thank the whole team today for doing a terrific job of sharing our prior XAI efforts and their results, and now the new baby, our new child, this new, not just something that works on our existing proprietary mathematics, but if I have this right, and I think I do, on anyone's mathematics, including neural networks. So thanks again to all of you. Terrific job. I want to just mention that since this is an investor meeting, we do have a B round open. We've made lots of money for our prior investors. We'd love to have you join us again, and we'll try and do the same thing for you on an ongoing basis. And now you can see how and why. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Brad.
Well, I want to thank you all for spending the evening with us. If you'd like details of our Series B, just reach out, bh@patterncomputer.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'll also try and address your questions as quickly as possible. I think it's going to take some time to absorb the potential impact of what we've seen here today. It is the fact that we can go in and address the general problem of GDPR by going in and looking at others' neural net and saying this is where their bias is and this is where it's not, is going to be that aspect alone will be huge for our business. So with that, we'll close the call and look forward to talking to you with our next investor communication.
Thanks to everybody on the call. Thank you very much. See you soon. Take care.